All right, here we go. I'm looking, Casey McAllister, our producer engineer, of what our on-air shot is. I don't think it's those two empty chairs over there.
No, it is not. No, that is not what's on there. That's the...
Are we going to see what's on air so I know who's on air?
Well, I've got the...
You got that up there?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's what... Yeah.
We ought to go back to the beginning of it, though. That might help. Hi again, everybody. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman. Luke Brenneman standing by from Bloomington, Indiana. We've already heard from Casey McAllister, our producer, engineer, and contributor. Our show is brought to you by UDF and Encore Technologies. We come your way twice a week, right here at Mondays at 9 o'clock on Chatterbox Sports. We post on the Believe Network later in the day. And our second day of the week is on Thursdays at noon Eastern Time. You can find us on the YouTube channel, many of you here right now by the thousands, and that's the Chatterbox Sports page. You can download us anywhere, anytime. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you are dialed in. Look, it wasn't pretty in any form or fashion. Casey came in here all bummed out today, right? The offense could never get it going, but let's face it, that's a good Giants defense. One of the best pass rushing defenses in the NFL. And the offensive line turned back the clock a little bit to 2022, allowing Joe Burrow to be sacked 5 times in the game. But it should be noted, Burrow on one of the hits had to go into the medical tent to be evaluated for a concussion. Thankfully, we were all holding our collective breath. He was okay and was able to return and finish the game, said he's fine. But at the end of the day, the Bengals get a season-saving 17-7 win over the Giants. Now, the defense, much maligned all season, rightfully so, finally did have its full complement of healthy players, especially along the defensive front, and they played like it. Rankins was there, B.J. Hill was there, Hubbard had some nice plays, Hendrickson a couple of sacks. And like during the run of back-to-back AFC Championship game appearances, the Bengals defense won this game for them. Yes, now you can say, big deal. Giants offense stinks. They had 2 of their best players that were out. You'd be right about that. But the defense got it done when the big moments called for it to show up. The Bengals are now 2-4 with a trip to Cleveland coming up next. How did you feel about last night? Do you feel any better about the team? Luke Brenneman, we start with you from Bloomington, Indiana, and I'm sure you have noticed my Indiana shirt before we get to you, because here we sit on Monday in the middle of October. When is the last time we were able to say this? In mid-October, the Indiana football Hoosiers are tied atop the Big Ten with names like Oregon and Penn State. Are they ready to roll this weekend after a week off in Bloomington?
Oh, they're absolutely ready to roll. I mean, you got back to campus and everybody else that goes to IU yesterday from fall break, and there's just a buzz in the air here. When you have an undefeated football team, no matter where you go come mid-October, there's something to be excited about and something to show up for. This game on Saturday where they host Nebraska, big noon kickoff is going to be here. Barstool's college football show is going to be here. This is about as good as it gets. They come out as 16th. They move up 2 spots in the AP poll. So it's been really cool. The fact that the first year I cover a team in any capacity as a beat reporter, it's this football team. It's like out of a movie, and I'm so lucky. But the fact that Curt Cignetti's coming here and able to do what he's done through 6 weeks is insane. And now's the first, I would say, really legit test in a Nebraska team who is a tough home loss away from being easily ranked inside the top 20 if they didn't lose to Illinois. So it's going to be a tough game. They're good, but there certainly is a buzz in the air here. It's homecoming week. When we look at the Bengals, though, there's a lot to be excited about. And people want to try and not be optimistic about a win like this. It's one of the worst teams in the NFL, yes. This is a Giants team who really did come into a perfect situation against Cincinnati on a home Sunday night football game. They beat the Seattle Seahawks, who I don't think the Seahawks story is over just yet after a couple losses. This Seahawks team is going to be good. I think they're going to make the playoffs coming out of the NFC. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run. And the Giants scored 29 on them last week. So for the Bengals defense to play the way they did, I know there's no Malik Neighbors. I know there's no Devin Singletary. But I would have rather seen the Bengals win a gritty game like that where they only scored 2 touchdowns, and one of them was kind of meaningless at the end where Chase Brown could have gone down, and the defense show up rather than another shootout, because that means there's no improvement on that side of the ball. Defensively, they showed up. They turned the ball over. The defensive line is getting healthier. There is something to be excited about. Again, I'm not going to go up here and say we're a playoff team at all, because we're not playing like a playoff team right now, but they got to win, and I liked the way they won because the defense did improve.
Look, by the way, great analysis, but that touchdown mattered. I mean, if the Giants get it back one more time, they can kick a field goal and they can tie the game. That was a big deal, that touchdown.
I'm saying he could have gone down.
I understand
Brown,
what you're saying. Yeah.
After he picked up that first down, he really didn't have to score the touchdown.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Casey, you walk in with a long face today. I got to tell you, you're starting to act like Ohio State football fans, and I'm one of them. But, I mean, when you win, you're complaining. When you lose, you're complaining. I mean, which is it?
Well, I'm happy for the win. I'm just more disappointed in the inconsistency of this team. And when are we going to see complimentary football? It's now week 6.
What does that mean?
Both sides playing well,
okay,
enough to the standard, right?
All right.
And I just don't think that has happened yet. And it's a shame. Joe Burrow played pretty good last night. Scored that touchdown in the opening drive, and then they went 6 straight drives punting the ball or turning it over, which we'll get into the turnovers later. But I felt like this was the time for them to put it all together, right? Everyone's back. And I know the Giants' defensive line,
they're good.
Very, very good.
They're good.
I thought that we had took those next steps forward with the offensive line. Now I've got my doubts again. I don't know what that looks like when we go up against T.J. Watt and Myles Garrett. So I just yes, it's a win. Yes, our season's still on. But it gave me more doubt about how the season will move forward, because if we thought that the main issue was going to be defense all season long and then we only put up 17 points against this Giants team, it's not a one side of the ball issue. It's a consistency issue. It's a coach not getting this team ready to play issue. Now they won the game, so I can't kill them, but it wasn't pretty. It was ugly. So
but see, here's the thing, though. I mean, and Luke, chime in on this. I have been the first one here to call the Bengals in a lot of big games against decent teams the softer team, right?
Yeah.
I thought at least last night. And I think it's a really important part, because when you're building your roster, you're building the roster for what you think these guys are capable of doing. And along that defensive front, they have not had 2 starters. Basically, I know Hill came back last, but I mean, he wasn't all the way healthy. And you had to play him more snaps when he was, because the guys behind him weren't any good, right? And I think that's one of the keys for Rankins and Hill, is that you don't force them to play 75 and 80% of the snaps. Play them 65 to 70, depending on how the game's kind of playing out. Keep them fresh. So then when the big moments come around, and it helped Hubbard last night having those guys there. I just saw it. Luke, I've called them soft. Nobody in particular soft, but collectively, and it's true, in their division, when they play the head-banging teams, they get banged around. But I thought last night, I felt they showed some toughness.
Yeah, I thought most of all, they showed some mental toughness, and I'm also going to add in the offense to this. The offense, this was probably harder on them from a game's perspective than it was for the defense. The defense showed up and did something that they haven't done all year, and that's string together stops. But for the offense, they've been scoring a lot of points with relative ease and quick on the clock. Joe Burrow was forced into really difficult third down situations. They were dialing up blitz. I mean, the Giants' pass rush is really good. And when they get Kayvon Thibodeau back, I actually think this Giants defense is really going to be strong if Daniel Jones can at least score 20-plus points for them. They're going to start winning football games. But outside of that, I thought that last drive where Burrow made that throw on the run was gritty as it gets. They hung in there. It was so ugly. And I will piggyback Casey here. There's nothing to be really excited about. I'm just happy that it's a victory Monday and we haven't had that in a while. And I think that there is something to be said for the fact that this Bengals team, there's nothing complimentary about the way they play football.
Yeah.
It wasn't complimentary football when they won the AFC Championship and sent us to the Super Bowl. They were down 3 scores at halftime with the offense hardly picking up a first down. They're a very streaky team. They have the Cleveland Browns next week. I don't care if it's on the road. By no means am I saying this is some easy win because the Browns are bad, because the Bengals are right there with them. But I'm saying another opportunity to get one game closer to 500. You can be down a little bit about the performance, but to your point, they showed some toughness, they showed defensive improvement, and they're only going to get healthier. I think next week is going to be a huge step for this team because they should beat up on the Browns, and if they do, you're right there knocking on the door of 500.
What is it that went south with the offense yesterday?
I have a couple different things. I think that both tackles just had some major miscues at very vital, pivotal moments of the game. Letting free runners go. There was some scheme issues there. I don't know if you remember early on in that game. We just completely let Brian Burns unblocked, basically. We're asking Gesicki to reach block across the line as we hand the ball off to Chase. Like, there's just some major issues in that game. And I would say it mainly points to the offensive line. But the other thing, too, is just the turnovers, the fumbles. One of them didn't matter, went out the back of the sideline. But the other one was very, very pivotal. They could have really sealed the game if Moss had not fumbled the ball there. If he holds onto that ball and they go down and score, that game's over. I mean, it was over after a touchdown anyways, but you get my point. They could have sealed the game much earlier. It just was a lot of offensive miscues. I thought defense played pretty good last night. I thought they were above and beyond. I am a little concerned about the 3rd and 1s, the short the short distance conversions,
right?
Because it felt like they were just, whenever they got into 4th down territory, if it was 4th and 3, they're going for it, and they were going to pick up the first down.
No doubt about
that
it.
worries me a little bit moving forward, but. Yeah, I mean, I think most of the issues were on offense, and it was just the miscues on the offensive line that really put pressure on Burrow. Had a lot of just hurried up throws, a lot of sacks. I mean, there was
a lot of hard hits.
Sacks. Yeah, it was a lot of hard hits.
A lot of hard hits, man. I mean, when he had to go into the tent, I mean, I know every Bengals fan is sitting there going, please, this can't be happening right now.
Yeah.
But look, I'm going to give them some rope. I mean, the dude has been hurt. He hadn't played much. Just came back a couple of weeks ago. When he has had to leave the game, he does come back into the game, right?
Right.
That's refreshing. And Orlando Brown's having a hell of a year. I mean, I'm with you, Luke. I just think that we don't realize, because we don't watch him much. You do, but a lot of us don't, how truly good that Giants defensive line is. You're not going to face many of those teams the rest of this season.
Yeah, no, they arguably can have 3 Pro Bowlers, maybe more. They breed monsters on their defensive line. I want to touch on a point that I thought about, and it was interesting that Casey said when you bring up those 4th downs, and it's something to worry about because I feel like the Bengals this season, if you look at the last 2 weeks especially, when they lost to the Ravens and just got shelled defensively, it wasn't how the Bengals shelled the Ravens. The Bengals picked up that 70-yard Jamar Chase screen pass touchdown. They had the Jamar Chase 50-yard bomb over the middle. They were hitting big ones. The Ravens methodically would go and get to 3rd and 1 and then convert, and then 3rd and 2 and convert. And as a Bengals fan, you knew that the Bengals weren't stopping them on 3rd and short, whether it was Lamar running the ball, Derrick Henry running the ball. And eventually, they were just getting whatever they wanted come overtime and the 4th quarter. But that was something that I was a little worried about because the Bengals have gotten teams to 3rd down this year. But if it's inside of 3rd and 3, this Cincinnati line really hasn't made a play. We're lucky that they threw the ball on the 4th down that DJ Turner made a heck of a play on that eventually pretty much led to us winning.
Which by the way, you made the call on that.
Yeah, I did.
You
I
called
guess
me
I'll
on the
take
phone and
credit
says
for that.
defense got to make a play. And I said, well, who's going to make it? He says DJ Turner. I said, come on. We hung up the phone. 2 minutes later, he makes a call. And guess who's calling me right back to remind me that he had said DJ Turner? Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, no. That was funny. I mean, when I called you and said that DJ Turner of all the Bengals was going to make a big play on the drive, I said, I'll call you back when it happens. And you said, you might be calling me tomorrow morning, as in it'll never happen.
Right.
So I had to call you back. But to the point, I feel like for the Bengals coming into the year as a Super Bowl contender, we have to be the aggressors defensively on 3rd and short, on 4th down. It feels like as a Bengals fan, I know they're going to give it up, and I know that's just consistency and recency bias. I feel like offensively, the Bengals fumbling the ball inside the final 3 minutes of the game, Chase Brown, it feels like we're playing to lose every game. Whether it's Zach Taylor's coaching last week, whether it's fumbling inside the final 2 minutes when you're in Giants territory, it just really doesn't make sense to me right now. And that's the glaring coaching issue that is showing its consistency every single week.
Steve Ross, thank you for reminding all of us in the chat, the thousands of you that are there, and we thank each and every one of you for being there. The Giants have 26 sacks in 6 games.
But he also points out that Washington did the exact same thing to us on Monday Night Football. I mean, this is a consistent issue with this team all season long. The 3rd and shorts, they just can't stop them. The making mistakes in the final minutes of the games, whether that's a Burrow interception, whether that's a Burrow fumble, whether that's a Moss fumble. There's been consistent issues with this team come down nut-cutting time, and it's a sign that this team is not very good. Not very good.
Well, they're 2-4.
They're 2-4, and I think that's the story, is that this team is just not very good right now. I think Burrow has said that last week. When they lost the Ravens, this team was not a championship team. It wasn't good enough right now, and it doesn't mean they can't get better. It doesn't mean they can't turn this thing around. And maybe they will turn this thing around starting right now. Like you said, it was 26 sacks the Giants have had over 6 games. That's a lot.
It's a lot. Bengals may not get that all year.
I don't know about that.
I'm kidding. But Hendrickson might get 26 away. He's going. He had 2 more last night, and he continues to play very, very well. They seem to be healthy, right? They came out of that game by and large healthy last night. Yeah. That's always one of the number one takes. I mean, we'll get to Aiden Hutchinson later in the show. I mean, all of a sudden you talk about a big weapon now. I mean, you win the game 47-9. But you lose, arguably, and you could debate this, but he's certainly one of the top 5 defensive linemen in the NFL. Some would say number 1 right now, but let's just put him top 5. I mean, he's gone for the year, sadly, broken leg. So, you come out of games healthy, you live to fight another day, you got to win, and now you're going to Cleveland. Luke, before we let you go, because you can't join us due to midterms this week, what are your early thoughts about the Brownies? My understanding is Nick Chubb will be back for this week.
I think that it's more about the Bengals and less about anyone else at this point, because the Bengals have proven offensively they can keep up with the Chiefs, they can dominate the Ravens. And it's more about going on the road and stringing together wins. As weird as it may sound, and maybe it's just me being super optimistic, the Bengals have won 2 of their last 3. It should be 3 of their last 3, but they are on a little bit of a run right now. So let's make this run official and win 3 of 4. To do that, like Casey said, if they play 3 quarters of complimentary football in Cleveland, they will win. They played that against the Ravens. They played that against the Chiefs. They didn't win because of how disastrous the 4th quarter would be. As a Bengals fan, I would love for them to play 4 perfect quarters. But the Browns are one of the worst teams in the NFL. They have nothing going for them. And the Bengals 1 week ago were in the same boat. However, coming off this win, as ugly as it may have been, the Bengals have a lot to play for on the road. It's a rivalry matchup. It's a divisional matchup. It's time for the Bengals to finally get a divisional win, put their foot down. And next thing you know, if you beat the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, you're a 3-4 team. And the way that the ebbs and flows of the NFL season can go and how competitive the AFC is in specific, they're right back in my opinion, if they win on Sunday. I get that it would be 2 straight wins against sub-500, really bottom-tier teams. But then you have a chance to prove yourself on primetime, or at least the 425 slate against Philly.
All right. All right. Well, Lukey, have a good rest of your day. Good luck in midterms, and we'll catch up with you again. I'm going to get your picks, by the way, for when Casey, you and I do those for Thursday. And we will get Luke's picks for the weekend. We have to make, by the way, Luke, normally you come up with the games. I'll come up with them this week. That Indiana-Nebraska game's got to be on the slate for this week. Or are you not allowed to pick that because you are technically on the beat?
No, I don't have any inside information, so I'll give some insight on it.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day, buddy. I love you.
Yep. See you guys. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thanks to Luke Brenneman, off and running. He called a women's volleyball game yesterday. Penn State apparently has a second or third ranked team in the nation. They're like this juggernaut powerhouse women's volleyball, right?
Wow, okay.
He gets to the arena yesterday. Sold out.
Ooh.
He said it was unbelievable, the atmosphere in that play. That is a fun game to watch because it's moving.
Oh, yeah.
Volleyball. You know what I mean?
Volleyball.
Phenomenal athletes. Phenomenal athletes. They can jump. They can move. They're quick. It's a good sport to watch. He had a chance to broadcast that. Imagine doing play-by-play. Now, he's already done stuff like this. I can't imagine having to do radio play-by-play for women's or anybody, men's, women's, doesn't matter, volleyball. And I listened to him yesterday. My wife, Polly, and I were sitting there watching him, and I just couldn't believe it. I'm biased, but I just thought he did a phenomenal job after calling women's soccer on Thursday night for the Big Ten U. So that's good stuff. He's getting a chance to do a lot of cool stuff. Good for him. You know, you look at the records of the would-be wild card teams right now. And I know it's really early. You know, you're trying to figure out where the Bengals, if they're ever going to get it together. But the best record of wild card teams right now, 4-2 Steelers, okay? Then you have 3-2 Chargers. Everybody else is either at 500 Indy or under 500 Jets. Jets play the Bills tonight. So, you know, look, the conference thing is killing them right now. I mean, they're killing themselves. They're 2-4. But the only 2 wins they have are against NFC teams.
Yep.
I really believe that this weekend, I think that this is a major statement game for Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
The Bengals have not beaten, not once, the Browns in Cleveland. I think it's 2017, the last time they won in Cleveland. That means Burrow was not in the NFL yet.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, he has never beaten the Browns in Cleveland. Neither has Zach Taylor. So, you know, they've shoved you around. Whether you thought they were any good or not any good, the Browns have run the Bengals in the ground in Cleveland. Right?
Right.
For almost a decade now. And it's not like the Browns are winning a bunch of championships.
Nope.
It's not like going to play the Steelers in Pittsburgh or going to play the Ravens in Baltimore. That's a different animal. I really believe that this is because on so many fronts, you've never done it, as we just said, and every game now, because of your start, is a season-saving game. You lose this game to the Browns, you're not getting back.
Right.
2-5. You're not. Right?
I agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, they would be way too far they would be 0-4 in the conference, which is just abysmal.
Yeah.
They just can't afford to lose to the Browns. They've only put up a high of 18 points this whole season. They scored 17, 18, 15, 16, 13, 16 points. If we can't score more than 20 points against the Browns, or if we can't hold them to less than 20 points, I don't know what to make of this team anymore because, I mean, it's just they're in a really bad spot with Deshaun Watson. He's putting up numbers like Jamarcus Russell.
You're right.
You ever heard of that guy? He's one of the worst quarterbacks ever to step foot on a
number
football
one
league.
pick.
And he was the number 1 pick. Might go down as one of the worst trades in history. Probably is, to be honest with you, Deshaun Watson.
So far.
And I know we've had that rhetoric here on this show many, many, many times, but it looks like it now. I mean, it's horrendous. This Cleveland team, if we can't beat them, I think it says more about Zach Taylor and the state of the Bengals than it does anything about.
I think you're right.
I think this is all about the Bengals. in all honesty. I don't think it has anything to do with the Browns. If they lose, they're a terrible team. If they win, they get to survive another week. They should probably win. Any way you look at it, any way you try to spin it. I mean, they've only had, I think, 7 touchdowns all season.
Yeah. And look, I'm not alone in this. I mean, they dissect this, no doubt, every single day in Cleveland about what has happened to Deshaun Watson. I mean, you could probably spend 4 hours on that, and everybody would have an opinion. I just can't believe it. I mean, this guy could run it. He could throw it. He's big. He's strong. He's athletic. Seems to be tough. I mean, look, I'm not talking about the stuff off the field, but I'm just saying this guy was really good for about 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden, all the off-the-field stuff happens. He leaves Texas. He goes to Cleveland. Boy, what do you think they're saying in Cleveland about Baker Mayfield right now?
Oh, man.
I mean, this is a guy that got them their first playoff win in forever, and they basically just threw him out the door when he was hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, look, whether you think Baker Mayfield's any good or not, he put up 50 yesterday, right?
Yeah.
50. I mean, this dude, believe me, when he planted that flag on the O at Ohio Stadium years ago when Oklahoma came in there and beat him, I mean, I was just livid and saying bad things about the guy from here to the end of the street. But the dude is a gamer. I mean, the dude is a game, and he is a Cleveland kind of a guy. He's not from Cleveland, but that's who Cleveland is, a guy like him, right?
Right.
Hard-working, gamer, passionate, and they let him go for what they're watching now. The Browns are awful. I mean, they're awful. They get 240 yards of offense in a 20-16 loss at Philadelphia yesterday. 240 yards. And in fairness to Deshaun Watson, he is getting killed every game, a lot like Burrow was yesterday, getting sacked all over the place. The Ravens knock off the Commanders. The Ravens are going to run away and hide from this division. I mean, say whatever you want. Steelers, look, they are what they are. Steelers are 4-2. And I've read here in the chat today where people are saying Russell Wilson is going to take over. Are you kidding me? You're 4-2. Justin Fields only throws for 150 yesterday, but he ran it for 60. He ran for 2 touchdowns, right?
Right.
I mean, look, Fields is winning games. And the men of aluminum blow out the Raiders 32-13. How do you think Jerry Jones is feeling this morning?
Not good.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Cowboys get annihilated by Detroit 47-9. We talked about the bad news with Aiden Hutchinson breaking his leg yesterday. He's out for the year. They had to rush him right to the hospital and do surgery right on the spot. Yeah. I've broken a tibia, man. It's brutal. It's one of your largest weight-bearing bones. The bone, there's 2 of them right next to each other, tibia, fibula, right between your knee and your ankle. And they kind of sit right behind one another. And the weight bearing on that bone is incredible. And so they had to fix that thing right now. Surgery last night in Dallas.
Right.
God bless him. I hope he's all right. Any thoughts about the Steelers?
Ooh, the Steelers, I'm with you on Justin Fields. I just don't see why you take out I guess he's not the hot quarterback, but he's not killing you either. He's exactly what you need him to be. And that's what I don't understand, why you take the risk of moving off a guy. I mean, he didn't do anything to harm you, but what makes him so good is that he hides a lot of the deficiencies of their offensive line play right now. He's able to move around and avoid pressure. He had 59 yards yesterday off 11 carries. That's pretty good.
And that's every game for him.
Yeah, I think that they need to move forward with him. I think he hides a lot of deficiencies that they have, and I don't think Russell Wilson's going to be avoiding much pressure unless they completely change up his style of his scheme, and they just start rolling out play action, which they could. They've got a decent run game going right now. I just don't see how you move off of him. I mean, you just need a guy that's going to be consistent, not turn the ball over, and not put the team in harm's way. That's what Justin Fields has done.
And I mean, that's the thing. We're sitting around here talking about how great the Bengals look in games, and they could have won Kansas City. They could have won Baltimore, coulda, woulda, shoulda, all this stuff. The difference between the two teams, and I don't know right now if the Steelers are necessarily a better team than the Bengals. They have a better defense, but the Bengals have a far better offense. But right now, the Steelers are winning those games. And they're playing, a schedule roughly the same. But at the end of the day, when the season comes to an end, the Steelers' schedule is going to be far more difficult than the Bengals. Bengals are playing a last-place schedule. And they've already lost it to the Patriots. All right. College football. Tell you what, say what you will. Again, here's one of those situations. UC beats UCF 19-13. Do they look great? They don't look great. They've lost 2 games by a total of 4 points. They're 4-2 on the year. They get Arizona State at Nippert for homecoming this weekend. And by the way, ASU beat number 16 Utah on Friday night. So that's no layup for homecoming. But UC's doing all right. I mean, everybody killed them last year. Satterfield this, Satterfield that, fine. But, the kid comes from Indiana Sorsby. They've got a good running game. Are they a perfect team? No. But they're a lot better than they were last year. So I think people are cutting Satterfield a little bit of slack. I'm not saying he's the perfect coach, but he's done all right. Then there's Ohio State. They lost at Oregon, and they should have won by 10 or more. I mean, let's be honest about it. They turned the ball over twice in the game, which led to 10 Oregon points off those 2 turnovers. The defense was brutal, and all we heard about was how great Ohio State's defense is. But they lose by 1 on the road at Oregon. They get a terrible call at the end. Look, I'm not sitting here saying that they look great because they didn't. But the bottom line is, if they just take care of the ball, which Oregon did. Oregon didn't turn it over. You get a fumble by Judkins. You get a fumble. For the life of me, now walk me through this one for a second, okay? I'm not up there in Columbus. But when you think of all these incredible skill position players that team has, right? And there's nobody in the country that has better skill players than Ohio State. Nobody. Maybe some as good, but not better. Why is a safety returning kickoffs? I mean, look, Caleb Downs is a first-team All-American safety. He was a freshman of the year in the SEC last year at Alabama. Nick Saban said he was his best defensive player last year as a true freshman. He transfers to Ohio State. He has been off the charts up until the game the other day. Why is he returning kicks? He had the other fumble in the game. Right after they had fumbled and Oregon scores a touchdown, Ohio State kicks off, Downs fumbles the ball, Oregon gets it right back, they kick a field goal. 10-point swing, 2 turnovers in 5 minutes. Anyway, Ohio State only slips to number 5. They were number 2. They only slipped to number 5 in the polls because it's a 1-point loss and it's at Oregon. I mean, end of the day. But what happens here is, I mean, I read a lot of, stories and comments, people saying, well, they'll play again in the Big Ten championship game. They might. But when you lose a game in college football, is as devastating as it used to be with a 14 playoff? Of course not. You got a 12-teamer this year. But your margin for error starts to get a little slimmer. And let's not forget, Ohio State has to go to Penn State, who last time I checked is undefeated. They rally to beat USC. Your guys, Penn State.
They'll beat Penn State.
Well, you know what I'm getting at here, though. That's a hard place to play.
Yeah, it is.
And they are undefeated.
Yeah.
And they've won some tough games this year against some pretty good teams. They killed West Virginia, who's all right. They go out to USC. They're not great, but they're not bad. And they pulled it out at the end when they fell behind. You got to play Indiana. I mean, most times we're laughing about saying that. But Indiana's undefeated. And Ohio State closes the year, of course, with Michigan. You lose twice, you probably don't play in the Big Ten championship game, and now you're rolling the dice on getting in as a, quote-unquote wild card. We're going to talk about all this here in a minute. Baseball. Dodgers clobbered the Mets in Game 1 last night of the NLCS 9-0. Game 2 is today at 4 o'clock. I don't know about you. I'm rooting hard for the Guardians in the American League Championship Series. They're the only non-big market team left. You got 2 New York teams and an LA team, right?
Yeah.
And look, I know a lot of people in Cincinnati don't root for Cleveland in anything. But I think for the good of the game, you have to root for the smaller market team. To see him finally win something.
I don't disagree. I agree and disagree because I think I kind of agree with Kinner's take on the Guardians, and that's they have one of the smallest payrolls, and they do the least amount of off-season movement, I would say, out of the whole league in baseball. And they still manage to win games. And they set a precedent for these other small market teams that they can do the same thing. And it's not worked out for a lot of the small market teams. It just – I do hope that they win, though, because I don't want these big market teams to win.
Yep.
I feel like it would be a gotcha moment. But also, too, they beat Jimmy's Tigers, so I can't really root for the Guardians either. It's a tough spot to be in. I like seeing Shohei Ohtani play. I like seeing him win, but it's the Dodgers. I don't know. It's a weird spot to be in as a fan of baseball.
Justin in here says Ryan Day's got to go. Come on. That's the first time he's lost to a non-team called Michigan in the Big Ten in his entire tenure at Ohio State. He's not lost to any other Big Ten team one time. And it was on the road against a third-ranked team in the country by 1 point.
And let's be very clear here. The events that unfolded there on that final drive where they got 10 men or the 12 men on the field, that penalty that ran off 4 seconds off the clock, all that nonsense, like.
Well, I tell you, they had a lot of those in a game the other day, and there's where you can point the finger at Day. They had a lot of those the other day. All of a sudden, they're rolling down the field, false start. Now, the bad news for Ohio State in that game was, besides losing, is that their starting left tackle is done for the year. Knee injury, Josh Simmons. I can't stand seeing guys on any team. Because these young men, not only are they competing for their school and themselves and their families, they're competing for their futures at that level. You know?
Right.
I mean, this is a kid who would have come back another year next year. He's a starting left tackle at Ohio State, so his chances of playing in the NFL are probably pretty good. And he's a really good player. Now he's out for the year. And they were scrambling around without 2 offensive linemen who went down with injuries in that game. And still only lost by 1, but it's a loss. And there are a lot of things you can pin on that. A lot of people want to make a thing about the Will Howard thing, at the end of the game. I read his comments and I saw some of the clips from him. Sometimes you're just sitting there in the heat of the battle. He should know better. He's been around long enough now. I mean, in all fairness, he should know better. But he said, I was just trying. I thought I had time to get 5 more yards, give our kicker a chance to win the game. Clock expired. End of story. So we move on from that because we really want to talk more about the Bengals here if we can, and a little bit about the baseball. I'm going to be interested to see what the ratings look like on television for last night, because baseball and football went against each other last night. Regular season football game, which generally always dominates a postseason baseball game.
Right.
But the postseason baseball game involved New York and Los Angeles. Now, the football game involved New York, right?
Yeah.
And Cincinnati. So, do I have any doubt on which of the 2 games had a higher rating? There's no doubt. The NFL will dwarf it. But by how much?
Yeah, that'll be interesting for sure.
But I hear the baseball playoffs have been fun to watch this year. I haven't had a chance to watch them much. But I hear they've been great.
I know a lot of it has to do with Shohei Ohtani just dominating. The Dodgers just dominating all playoffs here. Plus, like, the Tigers were a really feel-good story there, too. Yeah, and I'm with you. I'd be interested to see what the ratings are. I can't imagine that many of the New York fans stuck around for the end of that game because of it being a blowout, basically. But the Giants are not they're not that much better, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the final numbers.
Okay, back to the Bengals. I want to look ahead a little bit here to Cleveland. We've discussed this a little bit already on the show today about what I believe anyway, and it really doesn't matter what I believe one way or the other, but what an important game this is for them coming up, not only for their season right now, but I really think, and I don't want to get into words like legacy when they're both so young, but you certainly have to start changing if you're Burrow and Taylor. You have to start changing the narrative of who you are in your division. Everybody knows about the Bengals going to the Super Bowl. The next year they go to the AFC Championship game. But last year, the only reason they were not in the playoffs, and this includes Joe Burrow being hurt, the only reason the Bengals did not make the playoffs last year is because they couldn't win a game in their division until the last game of the season when Cleveland started all their backup players knowing they were already in the playoffs. They lost to Cleveland earlier in the year in Cleveland, got killed. They lost to Baltimore twice, one game when Burrow got hurt. And they lost twice to the Steelers, which Jake Browning started both of those games. Right? But at the end of the day, it was because they were continuously getting punched in the mouth all the time by teams in their division, the way they were just out. They were more physical than the Bengals were. If they win one of those games, 2 against the Steelers, 2 against the Ravens, and the other Cleveland game, if they win one of those 5 games last year, they're a 10-win team and they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So this is where you got to change the narrative. Because right now, I can promise you, as livid as they are in Cleveland, and they are no doubt livid, they're losing their minds up there on a weekly basis how bad they are. And the whole Deshaun Watson thing, which we touched on a minute ago. But I can promise you they think they're going to win this game this week.
Now, I mean, what other evidence suggests that they won't? I mean, we've never beat them. Well, I say never, but we haven't beat them in the Joe Burrow era. I feel like divisional games, you just throw the record books out, and I know that's an old cliche, but it's very much true. These teams hate each other. They're going to get up for this game, and Myles Garrett will not let this team flounder divisional games. I just feel like there's a sense of pride and leadership on that team that will not allow them to just roll over. They're going to give the Bengals hell, and we have to be ready for it. And watching the Giants last night, I don't know if we're quite ready yet. I don't know. I don't think we're just there.
But do you think Cleveland thinks they're ready for anything?
I think they saw a team that's – I think Cleveland watched that game last night and saw a very inconsistent football team. If they get that same type of offensive performance where they can turn the ball over once or twice, I think they believe that they can have a chance to win that ball game. They've seen what this defense looks like for the majority of the season, and they'll get Nick Chubb back this week, which has been the Bengals' kryptonite for a very long time. He gets 100 yards just about any time he walks on the football field with the Bengals. I'll be very honest. I'm very nervous about that game. Very nervous. This is probably I thought, yesterday was definitely the season-defining moment. After this win, I feel like this next week is.
It's going to be that way when you start 1-4.
Yeah, it'll just continue to be that way.
That's right.
But this one for sure, a divisional game, a statement game for Taylor's career. If you can't beat the Browns in your entire career, I mean, what hope do you have? What hope do you have making it back to the Super Bowl if you can't beat your division? It's just simple as that.
There's no doubt.
You got to take care of business.
You've got, and we talked about this before, and it didn't work out last week, obviously, against the Ravens. But, I mean, the Giants are not going to be a playoff team. I don't think so. Luke thinks they might make a run at it. He said that a second ago, based on their defense and get some healthy players back that they did not have in the game last night. The Browns are not going to be a playoff team. The Chargers right now would be a playoff team. But these are the team, the Eagles. Eagles are right on the border there. Could go one way or the other. But you've got them at home where you haven't won a game this year. But, I mean, you've got Browns, Eagles, Raiders. Before you go toe-to-toe with the Ravens for a second time, right?
Right.
So, we're really going to find out what this team is all about. I did see a difference, a big difference. And again, we can go back to the players the Giants were missing last night, their top running back, their top receiver. I get all that, and you have to certainly make that as a point when you're trying to define how well the defense that played against that offense did. But it did look different having Rankins and Hill back healthy last night, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it looked very different.
I would say besides Trey Hendrickson, they were our two best pass rushers, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
I mean, they made a significant difference. They made what the thing was, they weren't dominating the game, but they made plays when it mattered.
That's right.
And that's what we've been lacking on defense, is coming up with big plays or small plays when it matters.
That's exactly right.
And I think those two are crucial for that to continue on this defense.
They got to stay healthy in that regard. And look, then that's where we talked about number of snaps. And having been out of doing play-by-play for the last 4 years until getting the chance at the CW network this year doing the ACC stuff, you really learn some things when you're sitting down in meetings with these coaches about, what their thinking is on some of this stuff. So, we were talking to Georgia Tech. They're 5-2 on the year. They've had a hell of a year. That first game, they went over to Ireland. They beat Florida State. Georgia Tech's got a good team. Their only two losses were in overtime against Syracuse and at Louisville. A tight game. They got beat at the end. They're not a college football playoff team, but they're a good, solid team. But when we sat down and talked to their coach the other day at length, getting ready for the game, Brent Key, and he started, and nobody cares about Georgia Tech. That's not the point I'm making here, is you start talking to them about, well, our defense is only allowing 87 rushing yards a game. We've been really, really good. Well, why have you been good when you gave up 225 a year ago and you got the same guys? He said it's very simple. We have better backup players now, and we play those starters. We got like a 65, 70 pitch count on those guys. And we can put in a guy who's playing behind him and behind him and behind him for 15 or 20 plays in the game. And the coach tells us that it's impossible to put into words what that means. So if guys like Jenkins, right, and some of these guys can play well enough, they've had to play a lot of snaps because of the injuries to Hill and Rankins. But if you want to keep Hill and Rankins fresh and productive, and Hubbard for that matter, because he's playing hurt, we know that. If the guys behind them can just come into the game and do their job for 15 or 20 plays in a game, what a difference that could make to this defense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for years now, it's been, a 90% snap share for these starting defensive linemen. Hubbard, Hendrickson, was DJ Reader, and BJ Hill. The fact now that they can kind of rotate in guys, I don't think people realize how important getting back. I mean, we got back in the last 2 weeks 4 defensive linemen.
That's exactly right.
We got McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, BJ Hill, and Sheldon Rankins back. That's half of the defensive line roster just returning back to the fold, being able to rotate in and keep guys fresh. Gotta love it. It's a completely new look. If that continues to be how our defensive line plays, I will be more than satisfied with the moves that they've made to ensure that this defensive line continues to get pressure or continues to stay at a competent level. That defense last night, yes, the offense down its best 2 players. It played like an average defense, right? It played like the team that we thought they were going to bring out, right? A competent level. Not the worst. It's not the best. But it's good enough to
win games.
Yeah, good enough to win games. And Joe Burrow, as long as he's there, he's going to put up enough points to be able to keep you in games and keep you competitive. And I think when they come together and they finally have a complimentary game, we'll really start seeing some great games from the Bengals. It'll be blowouts here and there, and some solid covering the spread type games where they're just going to really put it down.
It always comes back to gambling.
Yeah. They covered last night, Tom.
Oh, my God. It always comes back to gambling. Trying to think. Before we close out the show, the Real Spirit Cat 1, thank you so much for reminding me of this. Oftentimes when we live – we live in an area, you follow UC, you follow Xavier, you follow whatever, whatever team is close is the ones you follow. There are some of us that maybe have extra time or it's our job to follow what's going on more, nationally. You're not going to know everything about every team. But I'll tell you, this past weekend, I was brought to tears this weekend. I did the North Carolina-Georgia Tech game. And Mack Brown is the head coach at North Carolina. And Mack Brown, he won a national championship at Texas. He's a current leader in active coaches wins, 285. And he's had a phenomenal career. He's a Hall of Famer. But I got to tell you, and there are a lot of people right now calling for his job. He won the first 3 games of the year. They lost now the next 4. And so that's a different discussion for a different time, and nobody who watches this show by and large cares. But there's one thing that maybe you ought to care about and just take for a second. We get to Mack Brown's office on Friday in Chapel Hill, and they're having the game dedicated to a young man on their football team. And this young man, Tylee Craft, was riding in the elevator at the football facility 2 years ago with Sally Brown, Mack Brown's wife. They're riding in an elevator, and as the elevator is going up to whatever level they were going, Tylee Craft all of a sudden reaches for his back, and he goes down on his knees. And his back, he has incredible pain. Now, this is a strong, lean, cut, defined, fit college football player in an elevator with the coach's wife just happened to be on there. His back starts really hurting him. So, natural thing is, Sally Brown says, hey, look, go get that checked out with the trainer. They think it's back spasms, right? So they treat it for some back spasms. Another day goes by, another day goes by, another day goes by. This kid can't practice. His back is really hurting him. They finally say, look, we got to get you to get this thing checked out. Stage 4 lung cancer. In a healthy 20-year-old kid. Stage 4 lung cancer. They told him on the spot that he would be lucky to live for 2 months. 2 months. That was 2 years ago. So North Carolina on Saturday has all the players and all the fans everywhere you went. They had the number 13, which was his number when he played, on these T-shirts, and they were raising money, a GoFundMe for his family. His mother is a police officer in Sumter, South Carolina. The university had provided in like a Ronald McDonald house, something like that. It wasn't Ronald McDonald, but it's right next door. I drove right by both of them close to our hotel. So his mom has been coming up trying to work 5 days a week, 4 days a week to support the rest of her family. but her son is going through this chemo and radiation. Mac Brown is telling us this kid would come to every practice after radiation. He would literally walk into the bathroom, throw up, and come back out for the rest of practice. And Mac Brown would tell him, son, you go home, get some rest. He's like, Coach, this is all I got. It's all I got, besides my family or my teammates. I want to stay right here and be here for them. So they're dedicating this game. His family was all brought in. He had just been moved to hospice. Mac Brown tells us on Friday. He says, I'm not sure he's going to live through the game. And we're just sitting there and, the moment hits you and Mac Brown says, these are the things. He talked about what an incredible impact this kid has made on his life, his family's life, the program, all those kinds of things. And he says, maybe you guys can help me. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do if this young man dies during the game and we find out about it. He says, because in this day and age of social media, it is going to get out. And somebody on that sideline is going to find out about it. I thought to myself, isn't that a shame that that's where we are now? Well, it turns out the kid did die before the game. And the staff at North Carolina made the decision. So when Mac Brown comes out, there was something you could sense going on because the mother was there. She was going right back to hospice. She drove in for the ceremony on the field before the game, was driving right back to be with her son. And when you saw the hug of Mac Brown and his mom, you sensed something was just not right. Anyway, sadly, the kid passed, and he's in a better place and healthy and playing football up in heaven now. But, I just wanted to share that with you because it really was when you think about your own kids or family members. I lost a mom to cancer. Maybe many of you, children, which is the worst of the worst. But parents or spouses or friends or whatever it might be. Man, it is just such a lesson to really cherish every day. It sounds so corny. And it's so easy for all of us as we go through the course of the day and our problems and our things that come up and work and all this kind of stuff. But, enjoy it, man. And enjoy when you got them because it was just heartbreaking to watch this past weekend. And our thoughts and prayers are with that young man and his entire family. And to Mac Brown because this was a tough day for him too. All right, Casey, we have off the bench. The boys are standing by in the bullpen over there. I can see them. They all look like they may have been getting tanked up during the game last night.
You think?
Well, they all look like they're hurting a little bit. And clearly none of them are watching this show because they're not even reacting to what I'm saying right now.
Shame.
That's right. We have people by the thousands watching Casey, but not even our
guys.
coworkers here on Chatterbox.
Lame.
It is. All right, they're coming up next. Casey, thanks for everything. Great job as always.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll see you on Thursday.
I'll see you on Thursday.
See all of you Thursday. Again, a reminder that will come your way at high noon on Thursday. Okay, so we'll see you then. Thanks for being with us. Have a great rest of your Monday.